Welcome, everybody. This is We the Parents podcast. This is episode 15, and my guest returning. Actually, this is your first appearance. You were on for a special announcement, not episode, for a special announcement. So I want to welcome Mark Ludwig from Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. How are you, Mark?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on and helping to raise the awareness. You do a great job.
Thank you so much. So I could introduce you. I know some things about you, but the best thing for me is always to let the guests introduce themselves. So Mark, tell us about who you are, where you come from, your background, where all this started for you, and we'll dive into it.
Yeah, based out of St. Louis here. Lived most of my life here. After college, I lived in Denver. I ended up getting a triple major, marketing, finance, and management in college. And but at the time, also started getting involved in politics. I started working on campaigns. I was president of the College Republicans for Missouri when I was in college, and started getting pretty active on campaigns. Worked on Governor Ashcroft's campaign when he got elected as governor. Ironically, I'm still very, very good friends with his son, Jay Ashcroft, who's the Secretary of State for Missouri. We've been friends for literally 30 years now. And
wow.
So I've been for 35 years. I've been around the political arena in different capacities. Served on the Missouri Small Business Policy Council for a time while Matt Blunt was governor of Missouri, who's a good friend of mine. And served on a lot of board of directors in St. Louis, board of directors of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, several different chambers of commerce, several different charity foundations. So I had a pretty good exposure. And then I also was a national speaker, spoke to total, it was several 100,000 people around the country over about a 15-year period of time on entrepreneurship, business, self-development, along the lines of John Maxwell, people like that. Spoke in arenas, the Freedom Arena, the RCA Dome, places like that around the country.
Wow.
And then went through a situation like many of us have found ourselves in, that before it happened to me, I wasn't even aware it was an issue. Literally had no idea it was an issue till it happened to me. And then I had some medical issues that sprouted up. I've got a growth in my brain. It's not a tumor, so it'll never have the hypergrowth. But it's a cyst in my pineal gland, which is the nerve center of the brain. And mine is pretty large. The gland itself is only the size of a pea, but my cyst at the highest point was 15.4 millimeters, which is just unbelievably large. And when it pushes on the nerves, you may not be able to tell, but there's a slight droop to the one side of my face. And it definitely down my cognitive ability. I don't have near the quick wit that I used to have years ago, and I can tell. But I think I'm able to fool most people. But went through a serious episode of that where I literally lost my short-term memory for about 9 months. We joke about it at my church, but if you ever saw the movie 50 First Dates with Drew Barrymore, that was me for about 6 months. Every Sunday, I remembered that I went to church. And I remembered that I always sat on the second pew, but I couldn't remember anyone in my church. So when they have the thing where they say, meet the people next to you, every week, the same people who sat next to me week after week after week, I would turn to them and say, hi, I'm Mark. Nice to meet you. And we kind of joke about it. Matter of fact, no, it is hysterical. Matter of fact, the family who did that, they sat next to me week after week, and they found what was going on. But they actually got Levi and I a Christmas tree a few years ago. It was funny when they brought it over here. They said, "Hi, I'm Kim. I sit next to you in church." But it was pretty funny. But after that got going, and I started getting more of my memory back, and a little bit more of, like I said, I'm not near what I used to be. But I just started doing a lot of soul searching of, why did this happen? And not to be over spiritualistic, but I just always believe that there has to be a reason that something happened. And I finally just, my belief is that it gave me a stronger testimonial. I'm very well known by a lot of people in the Missouri legislature. I've helped raise a lot of money for candidates in Missouri. And as most people know, if you help get candidates elected, they remember those people, because a lot of people come to them after they're in Congress asking for help and asking, will you do this? Will you do this? But they always remember the people who knew them when they were nobody. And I did help I mean, literally a lot of candidates that got elected. And it finally dawned on me, you know what? These people would have never known about this issue, but they know me. They know Levi. They saw what I went through. This wasn't something they read about. You know, a lot of these people were at my house. I was at their house, and they're now serving in the Missouri legislature. This is a powerful chance to try and help make them aware. And so I just finally decided, and then I spent the first year in the shared parenting community, if you will, trying to study the lay of the land. And not putting down, but a lot of people come into the community with guns a-blazing. They want to name a law after their kid, and they want to do all kinds of stuff. And my philosophy was the reverse. I want to study first. Anything else you do in life, you're an apprentice before you're an expert. And so I wanted to study and figure out, okay, who is in this community? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Jennifer, I see Jennifer from Michigan on there. But yeah, everybody has strengths and everyone has weaknesses. And I'm no different. I've got a lot of weaknesses. So what I try to figure out, is there a gap in the shared parenting community that my background, skills, and expertise could help fill that gap? And it started turning on me. The overwhelming majority of people come into this community. Their kids have been ripped out of their lives. They're frustrated as all get out, as I can relate to, but they don't know what to do. And they've watched movies before, like an Aaron Brockovich or something, and they see a movie and they think that, you know, what happened in the movie is the way that legislation changes. And so they're going to go out and demand their change. They're going to go out and protest at the Capitol. And I'm not putting those people down, because you always have to put people in you know, understand where they're coming from. That's what they think it takes. Unfortunately, that actually works the reverse. It works against you in many cases. So it finally dawned on me after a while, I think the best thing I can share with the community is, I don't want to be known as the guy who got the change made. I'd be more proud if, when life is ended and, you know, people are eating potato salad and coleslaw at my funeral, they're more talking, instead of what I did, of how I helped teach them what they could do. And so that's what I really try to do now, is educate people educate, empower, and enable people so that they can be the change and know how to deal with legislators, because no one person and no one organization, Garrett and I have been friends for 35 years here, but no one person is going to make the change. It's going to take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of leaders. Now, everyone has their own philosophy. So what I try to do is give people an escape route, if you will, and not feel like I have all the answers. And boy, if you don't do it my way, you're wrong. You know, there's going to be people always disagree. There's no way you're going to get everybody on the same thing. Yeah, Garrett, you better be eating coleslaw at my funeral. But Garrett's going to bring the coleslaw. But I try to just share ideas, because it's the same way with me. I've got several mentors, people that I've known for years that, you know, have served in presidential administrations and have served, you know, some of you know, Ed Martin, who is a very good friend of mine, was a actual advisor to Pope John Paul II, in addition to 3 U.S. presidents. So he's a very, very trusted advisor of mine. But I have several advisors, and what I do is I take input from each of them, and then I filter it with my philosophy, and then I apply it. So that's what I hope to add for the value for people in the shared parenting community, is to be a resource for them, so that they can sort of bounce ideas off me, and then they can go and make the change. So I don't know if all that rambling was what you were wanting or not.
No. That's more than I've known about you. Those are things. So we've been working together or associating together for a while, and you know, all the videos that I've watched of you, you tend to share a lot of the same compartmental information, because you try to be very safe about what you do share, but you want to be able to give people a little bit of background so that they can relate a little bit. One of the things that we talked about off camera and through text message was, you know, I want to know the Mark Ludwig, like you know the Chris Cole. I'm very vocal. I'm very personal. I'm very transparent. I'm very open. I don't edit. I do edit a little bit. I could be much worse. But I express my feelings, and I try to articulate that intelligently. I do see this as a complete violation of my rights. I find it unlawful, unethical, unmoral, and all the uns that you can say as an American, as a human being. So that's a lot of parents come at it from that angle. So tell the audience why is it that maybe you've sort of withheld a lot of sharing your personal story, as we know our friend Ryan Powell, who I'm sure wouldn't mind me being mentioned, had a recent spout. I know Walter Richardson reached out to me and told me that Ryan had lost access to his daughter, where he had regular access, because he was discussing his case. Now, I don't know the details of that or what was discussed specifically. I do know that what happened to Ryan is not okay. It's not lawful. We do have a lot of judges that sort of operate as their own little kings in their own little kingdoms. And that's sort of what I like to express when I speak. And I do it as carefully as I can. I know I may offend a judge here and there. But Mark, tell us why it is that you found that it was so important to approach this from a certain angle rather than, like you mentioned, guns blazing.
Yeah, you bring up several good points. I think the first point is to appreciate people who have a different philosophy. I don't know why, but in the community, there always seems to be an almost like a adversarial relationship with people within the community, where if somebody has a different philosophy, they want to cut that person off, that they're wrong. Right. And we have to appreciate the fact that there's some of your viewers that can't stand me, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
And some of my viewers may not like you, but that's the beauty is you can reach a market that would never listen to me, and I can reach a different market. And if we can get people to appreciate that fact, that say, look, we're all in the same community. Let's not fight amongst each other.
Right.
We have different philosophies, and we need those. Martin Luther King Jr., I think some of you know that I'm a very, very big fan of his. I'm very good friends with his niece, Alveda. And I had a lot of conversations with Alveda, who, by the way, is a big supporter of our issue. But Alveda King talks about the fact that her uncle, he knew a lot of people within the, culture that was trying to get change made for civil rights. Mm-hmm. Now, there were times he couldn't share the stage with those people. But that didn't mean they didn't have conversations that said, look, Martin Luther King Jr. can't be a part of such and such going on. And it's the same way with me for two reasons. One is, as you were talking about our personal cases, and I do talk to, matter of fact, I talked to Ryan Powell yesterday. I'm actually going to be in Nashville. I'm filming the Mike Huckabee show this weekend in Nashville. And I end up seeing Ryan down there. And I don't want to discuss his case. If his attorneys are watching, he has not discussed his case. I'm not talking about Ryan in particular. All the disclaimers we have to give. But yeah, unfortunately, and I saw Jennifer Payne on here from Michigan. I don't know if she's still on, but she will verify it is sad. But yeah, many judges almost rule as a kingdom, if you will. And their philosophy is they don't want anybody discussing any of their cases. Mm-hmm. Part of that may be legitimate to a degree, because they don't want, there's things that I could say about my son's mother that probably shouldn't be known public for his benefit.
Right.
And, all of us have sins, and, and there's things in our closet that none of us, every one of us would say, man, I kind of wish that I wouldn't have done that in my life, but it's been done.
Right.
But you don't necessarily want your kids to know that. And so there's some things I could reveal about her that, to be honest, it's really not in his best interest, because there's always a chance one of his friends in school could see it. Now, sadly, I think judges go way too far into basically saying you can't say anything at all. And some of them, it's just because they want to be in control, if you will, and they love the power thing. So over the years, I have watched many, many people like Ryan Powell, who were great advocates for our communities. But next thing you know, they get a gag order, and now they're not allowed to talk about anything at all. And so, I don't want to take a chance that anything could affect, as of right now, I get 8 overnights a month with my son.
That's
which
twice as many as I get.
Well, that's it. I feel guilty saying that, because I know, and there's a lot, I think of a Chris Rainbow that doesn't even get that. And many other out there. And it's a shame that I should feel bad about having 8 nights a month when some only have 4 and some have none. But to be honest, we should all have at least 15, because my son is still missing out on that enrichment of having a father get him ready for school, having a father do his homework with him. but I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize the 8 nights I have. And so as a result, I'm very careful about what I say. I try to never say anything that would discredit his mother. I try to talk about things in ways that are more systematized issues with the family law industry. That this is something that's just prevalent, not just in my case, but because that's the thing that you and I and those of us in the community have realized. When it first happened to me, I can still remember I'm sitting in my living room here and my couch over there. Night after night, I sat on that couch and cried. At the time, I was working for Aaron's Rent to Own. I had basically lost my business because I couldn't focus on anything. Yeah. And I don't know if Garrett's still on here, but Garrett Mees can tell you, what my life was like. I mean, my life just came to a shambles. And I can remember so many nights I would sit on that couch and come home crying and just looking at the ceiling, wondering, am I ever going to see my son again? Right. Will he ever know who his dad is? And I would look and the sun was coming up again. And I would realize, son of a gun, I've been here all night. I haven't even been to bed. I got to go change my clothes and go out the door again. Mm-hmm. But the challenge is you almost think that you're the only one in that situation and you don't want to bore people. There's a handful of people. I have a couple of friends of mine. I remember a Nancy Palazzola and Joe Vaughn that, bless their hearts, had to listen to my sob stories for just over and over and over. But you don't want to go around telling everybody. So you end up clamming up. And I didn't want to go out. I literally, matter of fact, to this day, I've never been on a romantic date in 11 years now. It's not an exaggeration. Not because I don't want to. I just, for a while, you just clam up. You don't want to go out. I didn't go to a ball game. I didn't go out with my friends. If anybody called to say, Mark, let's go out, I came up with an excuse. I didn't have an excuse. I just didn't want to be around everybody and depress them. Right. And you end up spiraling down. And that's what happens to millions of us in that community. And we sort of clam up thinking we're the only ones out there. And then all of a sudden something happens where you're either on Facebook or, for me, they put me on Channel 2 News in St. Louis because I was pretty well known and my story sort of went viral. And as a result, I got bombarded by calls and messages saying, hey, the same thing happened to me. The same thing happened to me. And then you start realizing, as you and I do, that, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. This is a systemic problem. This isn't just a me. This has nothing to do with his mother. This has to do with a family court system that is totally out of control. And we need to try and do something about it. So all of us have areas of expertise. You are a great podcaster. I do not have the skills that you do, although I just see a buddy of mine on here from St. Louis who's going to try helping me. I have no skills whatsoever in podcasts. I mean, literally, if you didn't send me a link that all I had to do is click on, I'm not exactly.
I had to learn too. So I get it. Like a lot of it too, Mark, is what our interests are and our strengths. So my strengths and interests are media, speaking, designing. I designed the background on the podcast. I enjoy the art. I enjoy the creativity around it and also the education of it. So I get to have guests like you on who get to teach me all the stuff that maybe I wasn't interested in researching myself. So now I have a head full of knowledge thanks to people like you and a direction, not only just to do a podcast, but I'm working on legislation as well. So I thank you for your expertise.
But that's what I love about the community. And that's what's the hardest thing for new people to understand is find your strength and work on your strength. Don't try and be everything. Don't try and be the legal expert, the judicial accountability expert, the parental alienation expert, everything. Find your niche. My niche is I know how to educate people about the process of what they can do to get legislation passed. Right. So I don't need to be an expert podcaster. This Doug guy hopefully is going to help me do better, and Garrett, and they can help me at least do a few things to help get my message out. But sure. I'm going to play on my strengths and educate. And
I'd love if you ever need help from me, if you have any questions, I would love to help you out.
Yeah. So like I say, we've got a lot of great people in the community, but my area of expertise is definitely because there's an art and a science to getting legislation passed. Right. And some people just will never get it. And that's okay. Then what we need to do is find out another area of their strength. I've had people that because I'm involved in legislation in 29 states that I've actively worked dealing with legislators in those states. And I have some people that just, I talk to them and
Garrett.
In my mind, I'm just thinking, wow, they have no clue. And some of these people have been to the Capitol like dozens of times, and they're very smart people, but they haven't really picked up on the nuances. Now, that doesn't mean they're bad people. What that means is we need to find a niche that they can play their role at, because they're not going to get some of the other. But there is an art and a science to getting legislation passed. The first thing to understand with legislation is, and you and I talked a bit about this off camera, is legislation, unfortunately, is not what the Constitution set it up to be in this country. Mm-hmm. And that's another reason why, too, and I forgot to answer the second part of your question about why I don't talk too many details about my own case, is from if you want to consider the terminology, almost a branding perspective, the perception. To have someone who deals with legislators, they always say, when in Rome, do as the Romans. Mm-hmm. There is a look, and I don't even know how to describe it without physically taking somebody to the Russell Building in Washington, D.C., which is the main Senate building in Washington, D.C. And if you walk in that building, you can tell who the professional lobbyist, and when I say professional lobbyist, I mean that in a good way. That's the best of the lobbyists. Now, we may not all like what they do, and especially some of the money these guys make, it's ridiculous. Right. But the reason they get paid so much is they understand legislation, they know how to get legislation passed, and they have the connections and know how to get past the gatekeeper to get things done. Right. And that's where those people get paid so much money, is the average person doesn't know that. And there is literally the difference between somebody who makes, $30,000 a year and $3 million a year is the difference between one of those professional lobbyists. But if you go into Washington, D.C. in that Russell Building, there's a little mini rotunda where they film most of the newsreels that you see, that you think they're standing in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. They're not standing in the U.S. Capitol. If anybody's been to the Capitol, the rotunda is way, way up there. They're not up there. Right. They're in this mini rotunda look-alike of the Russell Building. But if you stand in that corner, you could literally point out every one of the best lobbyists by how they walk, how they carry themselves, how they dress. And every person in the U.S. Senate knows that. And that's why they're so effective, is they've got it down to a science how to blend with the legislators. Now, it's not being funny, but if I want to get legislation passed, Garrett knows I'm highly underpaid. Garrett's on our board. Who knows that I basically have rejected my salary this year because we ran out of money because of COVID, which is funny because people used to have a tizzy about me making $1,500 a month. And I'm kidding. I'm thinking, I dedicated my life to this thing, putting in 20 hours a day some days, without a chance, if not to brag, but I think I could make some money if I chose a different career path than $1,500 a month advocating for legislation. But nonetheless, I need to have sort of a brand to work with legislators. And the challenge is, if I discuss details of my personal case with legislators, the challenge some of those think is, okay, if he would discuss details of his own personal case, would he disclose details of our private conversations behind doors? Right. And, there's a lot of people that I've met with, a lot of governors, a lot of members of U.S. Congress, that I've had just some meetings that, man, what I would give to be able to tell people, man, you won't believe this meeting I just had, but I can't, because they asked me to not disclose anything, and I would win the battle but lose the war. Right. 2 years ago, there was a group that went to Washington, D.C., and I won't say who their name is. I'm sure they're not watching this, so this is no way to put them down. But they brought their phone with them and put Facebook Live on when they went to go meet with the staff of one of the members of U.S. Congress. And they hid their phone under the table during the meeting. And they were so proud of the fact that they, cornered the legislators and asked them questions and got it on camera on Facebook Live. Yeah. The challenge is those legislators have staff members that monitor, and got a hold of that, And do you think that person will ever get another meeting with any other member of Congress? You know,
Right.
so they won the battle, but they lost the war.
Yeah.
And so it's very critical for me to be branded to where legislators know, that they can trust me with confidential information, that I'm going to carry myself a certain way, that I'm passionate about this issue, but I've learned how to keep my emotions at the door and discuss things. I'm a very hardcore Republican, about as hardcore conservative Republican as you can get. But Garrett will tell you in St. Louis and across the country, there's not a Democrat that I know of that won't take my phone call, because they know that, I separate the individual from the issue.
Right.
And anytime I've ever put down a Democrat, I've never done it as a person. I always do it based on an issue or on a vote, never on them as a person. And it's just sort of a certain way you have to carry yourself. Now, that's not saying that everyone else does. And that's why I said why you and I make a great team, because you can get away with saying certain things that I can't say, but sometimes they need to be said. I just can't be the one to say them. And that's why it's important for us to have each other's backs, and for you to understand, and other people that have a different branding than me to say, look, we don't want Mark. And Cash Jackson is probably the best of this. Cash and I have been friends for 5.5 years now and have traveled all over the country together. And I'll tell you what, Cash has had my back many, many times where people have gotten mad at me, and Cash has said, look, you don't want Mark doing something like that. We've prayed and prayed for 20 years for somebody like Mark that knows these legislators, has their numbers in his cell phone. And now that we have somebody like that, we're wanting to do away with the strategies and techniques that got him in the doorways. We need him there. We just need to know, when do we need to separate, and when do we have the join together? Right.
Yeah, like you said, there's multiple. Any battle is one. You made mention of different battle strategies. Anybody who's been in the military knows that there's an infantry, and then there's strategists, there's generals, there's people. There's more than one ways to fight a battle, and it's not just run on the field and attack. That's not going to win many battles. Although they used to do that back in the day when they weren't as bright and they lost a lot of lives.
Yeah.
So
it's just a flesh wound.
Yeah. So two of the things that I want to talk about, going back to earlier in your story, and feel free, because this isn't rehearsed. So if I ask a question, you can politely just push it aside and we can move on. But what is your reason in your situation? And you made mention of your medical issues. Is that what's being used? Is that the weapon that's being used against you, Mark, as a father, as a parent, that's keeping you from an equal opportunity with your kids?
That was one of the things that came up. There was a whole host of issues. And as many of us know, many of the situations are actually generational, where a person who's trying to keep the non-custodial parent away from the child, many times it has nothing to do with that individual. It has to do with the fact that they didn't have a relationship with their parent. And because of that unresolved issue, until they get that issue resolved, the way they get back at the parent they really want to get back at is the parent to their child. And that happens in many, many cases. And in my own situation, I'm the third father that she's had children with. And the other two fathers, without going into all the detail, had a, in my mind, very unhealthy opportunity for a relationship with their parents. And sadly, I wasn't aware of it. Matter of fact, to be honest, I was basically an enabler without realizing it to father number two.
Right.
And, the replacement issue, where they basically try to get, whoever they're currently dating acting as if they're the father. And I had no idea what was going on until afterwards I started realizing, oh my gosh, what's happening to me right now is what I was unknowingly kind of a part of with father number two. But yeah, in my own situation, we weren't married. And I know there's a lot of people wondering, why don't you talk about being an unmarried father? Remind me of that point. Let me go through the background. But there is a very specific reason why I don't make an issue just of that. Because if we get the laws passed for equal shared parenting, it's going to affect both parents either way.
Right.
But we weren't married. And about 6 weeks into it, I was basically informed that I was not going to be allowed to have access to the child. And so I went 204 days without seeing him. And during that period of time, she moved without my knowledge. So there was a period of time where I didn't know if I would ever see him again. And it was just the worst feeling in the world. And I know Chris Rainbolt and some of those people can attest to the fact of wondering, oh my gosh. And I started, your mind plays all kinds of tricks on you. You know, what if I die and my kid grows up wondering whatever happened to dad? Did he want to be a part of my life or not? So I started, I think a lot of people are aware I have a journal somewhere that I keep on my piano because I literally write to him every night before I go to bed. And I keep it up to this day. This is book number 42. But started writing during that period of time because I thought, just in case something happens to me, this is before we knew something was wrong with me medically at the time. But just in case something happens to me, I want him to know. So in the journal, I try to never put his mom down. I try to tell him from my perspective. I don't hide the fact that I wasn't having access to him, but I just basically try to talk in terms of how much I missed him, how much I loved him, how much I wanted to be a part of his life, because I wanted him to know that he was loved. And you know, I talked about what it was like to drive by a bus stop in the morning, knowing that you have a child that you don't know where he is, if you'll ever see him again, and just different things like that. And then I ended up keeping it up. Basically after the custody battle, well, during the custody situation, the guardian ad litem had made the comment that she believes all children are better off with the mother as infants than in a shared parenting situation. And which, you know, the tender doctrine is illegal. You can't do that. The challenge is I wasn't aware of it. Yeah, I wasn't aware of it.
And the tender doctrine isn't even relevant. It's not even scientific. It's actually been debunked.
Exactly. But my attorney didn't make me aware of that. And so I'm at the mercy of an attorney. I'm running out of cash. You know, I mean, literally depleted to the point where I'm starting to worry about, am I going to have food? Am I going to be able to get to work and put gas in my car? And I realized, okay, all of my money with my attorney, my retainer's gone. I have no money. We're heading to a trial. I've heard all these horror stories that a trial could run another $10,000, $20,000, and I don't have anything. Right. And so I ended up settling the day before the trial. And you know, so many times you hear people, and I've heard this in so many Senate hearings, they say, well, the majority of cases people settle anyway. Well, yeah, they settle because they ran out of money. Right. And their choice is, I'm going to go to trial with an attorney that may not represent me because I don't have money, and so I'll get nothing, or let's settle and at least get something. And that was my attitude is, man, I want to at least get something out of this. So, you know, I settled and I got a graduated plan, which was ridiculous. Early on, I got basically a couple hours a week. And then I didn't even get overnights until he was 16 months old, before I got my first ever overnight. When he was 16 months old was the first overnight I actually had. And
can I ask you what grounds, like at this time, what were they throwing at you that the judges were making these decisions?
The judge wasn't doing anything. This is just during the trial when they were doing the pre-hearing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I have no legal background whatsoever. I'd never been in a courtroom. I didn't know what to expect. And so I had asked my attorney, you know, shouldn't we prepare for this? You know, when they were doing their, you know, deposition, I asked my attorney, hey, you know, shouldn't we spend some time preparing? What questions could they ask me? And what questions should we ask them? And she said, oh, well, you know, by that point, I had really run out of money. And I had a business that I had owned at the time that was collapsing on me because I couldn't focus. And I know what happened is she knew I didn't have the money to prepare for the deposition. So she was just going to skip that. Yep. So I show up and they're bombarding me. And I'm like, holy poop, I'm getting the poop beat out of me here. Right. I don't know what to do. This isn't looking good. I've got a guardian ad litem who says she believes that mothers are better, children are better off with their mothers. And
which if we have
that, like I said,
if we have guardian ad litems with that viewpoint, we need to remove them, because
exactly.
that's terrible.
Oh, absolutely. That was a highly biased, and she was implanting a seed in me that forced me to settle, basically. So I ended up settling, and then
they can.
So then, like I said, it was a couple years later that it was a couple of years later I started having the medical issues. Garrett can remember there were, the time that we really knew something was wrong. I had a buddy of mine, Rich, that had gone over to my parents' house to move some stuff around in their basement for my mom. And the next day I ran into Rich, and he made a comment about being at my parents' house the day before. And I was like, Rich, we were at my parents' house. And he goes, we just moved all the furniture around. And I'm like, Rich, we were not at my parents' house. And I'm thinking he's playing a joke on me. And he's thinking I'm playing a joke on him. And the next day I run into this Joe Vaughn, who's another buddy of mine, and same thing happens. He's talking about something that happened the week before. And I'm like, Joe, what are you talking? And I'm thinking, Rich called Joe, and they're playing some joke to make me think I'm forgetting things.
They're messing with you,
And then I went into I ran into a buddy of mine who's a chiropractor, and I casually mentioned to him that there's a lot of stuff going on. That are these people playing a joke on me? And he gets a pen light out, and he looks in my eyes, and he's like, Mark, you got to get an MRI, buddy. He's like, your pupils are bouncing all over the place.
Wow.
You got to get an MRI right now. And so I went and got an MRI, and that was when they found the growth. And Garrett's on here. Garrett can tell you it got bad for a while. Garrett remembers my speech started really slurring, and I was drooling almost like a stroke victim. It got bad. And that was the point when I really got scared, because I thought, you know what? I really don't have a relationship with my son at this point. I've got very limited access to him. He's never going to remember who I was. And so that was when the journals became even more important. And that was when I started writing sort of life lessons in the journal, because I thought, just in case something does happen, sounds gross, but I thought at least I'll have in the journal what I want my parents to tell them about. I put little things in there like, if you're going to be surrounded by people, go out to dinner with them and watch how they treat waiters and waitresses. Because that's an indicator of their character. If they act like they're too good and waiters and waitresses are just there to serve them, that's not a person you want in your inner circle. But if they interact with waiters and waitresses and treat them as equals, that's a person who could put a lot of life lessons like that in there, and dating advice. And as it turned out, things started. I basically got a miracle, if it's still there. But I've met people in the waiting room of neurologists who have a cyst that is less than half my size, that aren't even remotely able to articulate the way I can right now. I mean, not even close. And I believe in my heart that somehow there was a reason for it. And I just kept praying, God, what is the reason? Why did I get through this? And why did I have to go through all this kind of stuff? And that was when I just sort of felt like my reason was to get involved with the shared parenting community and sort of share my story with some of my friends that were legislators, to say, look, if I would have died, my son would have no recollection of me whatsoever, because he had such limited access. And how many times why should it take something like that to wake people up to this? So that was when I started really diving in to get active in the shared parenting community.
And that lesson of, I try to tell people when they reach out to me often is Chris, what can I do? And they're very complimentary, just like they are of you. And I say, you got to take your pain and give it a purpose. Like, I had issues in my relationship as well. And I was coping at the time with alcohol, and my relationship was very unhealthy. I was becoming even more unhealthy, and I was trying to maintain. So I'm working all the time and trying to fix my relationship that I can't fix. And, was struggling, not struggling with alcohol, but when I would drink as a coping mechanism to all the stress and all the frustration and the pain as a man, I was drinking too much, and I would drive a car, and I got in trouble for drinking and driving. Never hurt anybody, didn't hurt myself. So thank God I looked at that situation and I said, all these things that I think are bad that happened to me are actually a blessing. I'm still alive. I'm still healthy. I'm still here. And I got the perspective now from the outside to not only share with my kids, but share with other parents who are struggling like I was, and be able to teach them something without getting on a high horse or feeling like I know it all. Because, I've said on this show before and other shows is I don't know it all. I made so many mistakes, and that's why I can tell you, a little bit of advice and give you my experience, because I have done so many stupid things that I learned that way. I don't learn. I'm the kind that doesn't learn I do now. Now I listen. But I used to have to screw up a lot, and my rock bottom was sometimes too low before I made changes. So, with health issues, with behavioral issues like I was having, like just doing things, trying to cope in an unhealthy way. All these things that you and I have been through have made us better men and better fathers. So, I appreciate the emotional moment that you just had, and I tried to not have it myself as the host of the show. And so, Mark, thank you for sharing some of that personal stuff with us. With the remainder of the time, though, I want to jump into a big thing, which is the biggest issue that we advocate against, not only in just shared parenting, but the financial incentives, the mechanism that drives this industry, and that's known as Title 4D. You've done a very elaborate, as a few others have, very viral, elaborate video on Title 4D, which you can go on AFESP on the Facebook page, or probably on YouTube as well, and type in Mark Ludwig or AFESP, America's for Equal Shared Parenting, and Title 4D, and you'll be able to watch that video. That's a good educational video. So could you, for my audience, just sort of snippet that into about 5-10 minutes and let us know what that mechanism is, how you believe, or if you know how it's developed, and what its intent was, and what it's actually doing?
Well, that's what I realized is I started diving into the state issue because there's two issues. Equal shared parenting is a state issue, has nothing to do with child support. The federal issue is the Title 4D, which has nothing to do with equal shared parenting. And that's
right.
a thing for people to understand if they don't understand the legislative process. But as I got involved in the state issue of 50-50, I started realizing that we were hitting a brick wall over and over and over and over. And one of my mentors years ago in politics told me that if you're having just the hardest time getting something passed and you can't figure out why, there's a money trail somewhere. You need to find that money trail. And one money trail, as we know, is the family court industry, which there is so much money if you can create that adversarial relationship, because people will give up their house, they'll give up their car, but they'll drain their entire finances to fight for their kid.
And their families. Yeah.
Yeah. But the second issue was this Title 4D. And the weirdest thing in the world, the irony is, for years, I was not very close personal friends, but pretty close to Phyllis Schlafly, who's considered one of the probably biggest female political icons in American history. Happened to live right here in St. Louis, and I knew her for years and knew what an icon she was and all she had done and everything, and had just tons of conversations with her, and matter of fact, helped host her event many years.
Yeah.
And never once talked about this because it wasn't an issue to me.
Right.
Until by the time she was fading, right before she died, is when I made the connection, and come to find out that the first person that started sounding the alarms for Title 4D in 1998 was Phyllis Schlafly.
Wow.
And Phyllis Schlafly wrote articles talking about how it was going to create a fatherless society. Because just about anything that you look at, any social program, that's why I'm very concerned about a lot of these things being run through Congress right now.
Right.
Because they love to have any kind of an emergency, any type of a crisis is a good reason to pass a bill. The challenge is those bills should have an ending date on them, that when the crisis is over, we stop this little crisis thing that we're trying to fix here. And what happened with Title 4D, back when I was growing up in the Beaver Cleaver days, my dad was a chemical engineer. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so if 12 years into the marriage, they had gotten a divorce, it would have been very hard for my mom, who'd been out of the workforce. Matter of fact, she'd only ever worked for 12 months of her life as a bank teller.
Wow.
You know, she was a homemaker. That was her job.
Yeah.
And so it would have been very hard for her to get a job all of a sudden, supporting herself and everything. So they set up a mechanism that if somebody wasn't paying child support, and this is important, the second part though, and as a result, the other party ended up on welfare, then the government set up a program to basically get the money back that was being paid out by welfare for this person from the, paying parent. But that was supposed to be a means-tested program that the government would never get involved unless welfare was involved. And that was the way the system was set up. Now, I'm semi-okay with that part of it. The challenge is there's mission creep, just like any other social program the government sets up.
Sure.
And there were 3 different times that it increased. The main one was in the 96, 97, when they basically threw every case that went through the court system into the Title 4D program.
Right.
And basically overnight, 19 million cases got added to the Title 4D program that were not means tested. They were middle-class cases that should never have been in there.
And you can fight the data, right?
Oh, yeah. And so the challenge is because there's 2 parts to the program. One is a reimbursement, where states are reimbursed for the money they spend on child support collection efforts. So it's not, as some people have misstated many, many times, they say for every time they collect child support, that money goes to the state. No, it doesn't go. What happens is if they have to hire an employee to track someone down or to put a garnishment or all the other bogus stuff that they do, they pay that employee's wages. Well, I give the analogy. Imagine if you were going to open a restaurant and you had budgeted that you could afford to pay 3 employees $10,000 a year. So you've got $30,000 set up because the first year you have to have that money set aside before the money's coming in to pay those employees.
Sure.
And all of a sudden your rich uncle comes to town and says, tell you what, I want to help you get started. So for every employee you hire, I'll pay for 2 more for you. Well, you'd already planned on hiring 3 employees. Imagine how much more service you could give if you had 9 employees in that restaurant and your uncle's paying for 6 of the 9.
Sounds great.
Well, that's what happened. So the states inflate their budget. They hire all these extra employees, and everything they do is encoded as child support enforcement. So now the states have this inflated budget. Once a state has a budget, they're not going to decrease it ever. If they hired those employees, they don't want to have to tell the state how they laid off employees. So it's only going to be there or grow. Then the second part is the incentive bonus, where over $500 million is put into a pool to pay states basically as an incentive for following up on what they termed as the deadbeat dads. However, it's not the deadbeat dads they're going after. Because imagine this. Imagine if you're a child support enforcement worker and they put 2 files on your desk. One file is from somebody that's a means-tested program. So you're going to have to track down where they work. The challenge is they've changed jobs about 8 times in the last 10 years. You're going to have to track down where they live, and they've changed residences a bunch of times too. You're going to have to get the money, which they may not even have any money when you track them down. And the order was probably only $200 a month anyway. So you're going to spend 40 hours and may not get any credit for that. But you got this other file over here. Joe middle class over here. His child support amount is, I don't know, $500-600 a month. All you have to do is garnish their wages, threaten to take their driver's license away, and you look like a rock star because you got 2.5 times credit without doing any work. But you're going to prove that you did work. That, you drove to their work to verify, and you spent 3 hours verifying that, and you did all kinds of stuff. And so what's happened is people the program was set up for are getting off scot-free, and everybody knows it. What they're doing is they're going after people like you and me. It's just, it's for money. And the sad thing is those people aren't even remotely at risk of being on welfare for not getting the child support. And it's become, like you said, it's become a money grab. And the ironic thing is our opposition at the state level always tries to frame this as, well, this is just a bunch of dads trying to get out of paying child support. Well, if that's true, doesn't that mean that they're trying to collect more child support on the other side? Why is it okay to say that we're only interested in not child support, but the other side isn't interested in collecting as much child support as they want? So who's really in it? Because if I go from 8 overnights a month to 15 overnights a month,
then it costs
I've
you
got
more money.
7 more days of expenses that I'm actually paying for my child, not running money through the government so they can get an incentive bonus to pay someone else. Then who knows what's being done with that money?
Right. And these, I have it on video a couple of times, and it's funny that these attorneys, including my exes, and he knows who he is, and he watches my stuff. So how you doing? They condition these sort of clients who are scared and don't know anything and just want to take care of themselves, and they condition them into an idea that's illogical. And one of the things that her attorney said in court, and I thought was absurd when he said it, and especially as a father who has children, said that, Your Honor, clearly this is a child support case wrapped in a custody battle, meaning I'm there to fight for custody so I don't have to pay child support. Immediately, that's illogical. I feel like the man should be disbarred, his kids should be given to me, and I should raise his children. Because if he's teaching that to his kids, they're not better off. That's abuse, because that's not math. So,
Exactly.
Besides that, then we get on a mediation call, and I have that recorded as well, if I ever need to use it, to just tell the story. I know it's not admissible in court. That wasn't why I recorded it. I recorded it to show a timeline, to show the truth. But their mother literally repeated that same sentence to the mediator, and the only thing that she mentioned in mediation was money. It wasn't about what was best for the kids. So clearly, any judge who's unbiased and logical and coherent would see that you can see what's going on here clearly. So to say that a man doesn't have expenses, because that's the justification, Mark, right? That's what you're saying is.
And that's exactly it. Is people forget, you know what? I have a bedroom in my condo. So, I can't segregate out, even though I've got a small condo and a very, very small mortgage. I can't call the mortgage company and say, you know what, my son's only here 8 days a month. I'm only going to pay 8 days a month of that bedroom. No, that bedroom's there for the entire month that I'm paying the mortgage on.
Right.
And that's what people forget, is you're still paying the extra expenses. And
for the visitation.
Really interested in money. In most cases, when we have dialogues with people from the opposing view online, almost every time it's the other people who bring the money up. We're talking about time with our kids, memories with our kids, bonding with our kids. Why would somebody spend $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in legal fees to try and lower that doesn't come out in the wash of child support? No, what I want is, I want that sand before it goes through the hourglass with my son. I want him to know who his dad is. Today I had lunch. It was his last full day of school in 5th grade today.
Wow.
And almost since I started school, I've never missed a
signal's a little rough.
Just a few because of COVID. They didn't like people coming in the school, but
Mark, if you can hear me, I'm going to remove you from here if you want to sign out and sign back in. I think we lost signal. So while Mark's figuring that out, if we can get him back on, so going back into what we're talking about the money issue is, to sell in court that, a father or a mother just doesn't want to pay child support, that's why they want access to their kids, is an absurdity. That's a terrible, if that's your best lawyering capability, then you need to get another job. But so, like Mark was saying, the expenses still exist. That's the whole point of child support. If you have expenses and you're justifying a father or mother paying child support to a custodial parent because that child needs to be taken care of. Well, obviously that's why the child support order exists. Let's see if we can get Mark back on. Mark, you there?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
It's all good. We can keep going. So go ahead. Like you were saying, it's to justify the fact that the expenses don't exist on one end, but it's the reason that they extort you on the as the non-custodial parent on the other end is absurd. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it really is. And like I said, what I'm after is, I've already lost all my finances. It's not about the money. Garrett Mees can tell you, anybody who's, and there's several people that have been to my condo and seen the way I live. It's not about the money. It's about those memories I want with my son.
Yeah.
And that's why I do the things like even the 10 minutes to be able to see him at lunch is I want those memories with him. That's something you can always settle the money down the road. You can't settle the time.
Hey, you know what I'd like to do one day, if it's possible, and I said this to a few other of the parents that work in this movement that still have some access to their kids, is I'd love to plan a trip, whether I have to come to you, you come here, and I don't know if you can travel with Levi, but I can travel with my kids, and come hang out. I would love a picture of us with our children together and keep that memory of these parents. If I can get with some, I was with Linda Steele in Oklahoma. We have pictures together. And I said, Linda, one day I'd like, when I have my kids, maybe during the summertime, if I can have more access. And I'm fighting for that right now. Currently, I have court coming up because they only wanted to give me 2 non-consecutive weeks out of the summer. Well, the summer is like 8 weeks long. What an absurdity to offer me 2 non-consecutive weeks when there is no school, there is no the excuse of structure being needed for school. Like, it's summertime. And so I said to Linda, I'll bring the kids down and we'll get pictures. We'll have some fun. Because I really think that shows a lot. It's like we're doing what we can. We have these things. I think the change will not only come in our lifetime, I believe it will. I don't believe that we're going to allow our kids to have to deal with this. But we get to show through these podcasts, through your journals, through my music, all the things that we did in our generation, and we're all in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, and that we said, this is not okay anymore. This is what we did. These are the friendships that we built. These are the bonds we made. People from all over this country, in different countries. I know people in Canada. I'm sure you've spoken with people in all different countries that reach out to you. Let's talk about that message that being able to go, well, I may not have my relationship exactly how as I want it, but my kids won't have to suffer through this. We're going to make memories. We're going to literally leave our footprint in history as making change in this world.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason I'm doing this is I want to make sure that my son doesn't pass this on to another generation to where he has to go through this. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I think, like you said, we've got some great leaders across the country. But I do think it'd be neat. As a matter of fact, it's funny because I was planning on trying to take Levi to Branson this year for a trip, and I was actually going to put a message out on Facebook saying, "Hey, any of my friends have kids that plan on going to Branson because Levi's my only child, and I know he enjoys doing things with me." But there's sometimes where you'd like to have another kid with you while you're doing stuff like playing miniature golf. So I was thinking of putting a message out saying, anybody planning on going to Branson this summer, let me know, because man, if we could coordinate that trip. And
where is that? I've heard of it.
It's in southern Missouri.
Okay.
It's at the Lake of the Ozarks. So it's sort of halfway in between Tulsa and St. Louis, if you will.
When is that? That's this summer?
Yeah, this summer I'm planning on taking them down there.
Let me know.
Or Nashville, but I was thinking somewhere in the Midwest that
Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville would be a neat because, like I said, Levi and I are going there this weekend too to see a little of the sights there and be on that Mike Huckabee show.
Well, let's get together and maybe we can do that. Maybe we can get together and that way we can have a conversation face to face. The first time I met you was in Nashville with Ryan Powell,
right.
and I was actually playing a show in downtown Nashville, and you guys were on the rooftop at the bar that I was playing at in I think it was Luke Bryan's or something like that, Jason Aldean's, And you guys were having a conversation up there, and I just briefly said hello. And this is when it first all started for me. Like I was a few months into this. And so that's our sort of story of coming together. But I would love to get together privately and on a chat, and let's figure out, as I'm working on my summertime with my children. I will totally meet you. I will totally take a week or whatever and come to you and spend time with the kids and take some pictures and give them something to look at, like when we're in our 60s and 70s, and be like,
exactly. Yeah, I think it'd be great.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's how I met Cash Jackson, was at the original Million Parent March. That was what it was called. There wasn't even close to a million parents, but there were, I think, 17 of us that we rented a Airbnb.
Yeah.
And we had, I think, in the bedroom Cash and I were in, we had 8 people in that one bedroom.
That's what I'm talking about. That's college stuff.
James, Kelly, Ira, me, Cash, Carlos.
I know all those guys.
We built some great friendships that it's a lifelong bond after.
Oh yeah.
You spend 3 days with people with no sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you're that close together, sleeping 3 on a bed.
I mean, I would have never driven to Oklahoma, and I drove and saw Cash in Arkansas more than once. He's come here. We went to New York. I've met Ira. I've met all these people. I've interviewed with Carlos. I've traveled throughout many states, and what a great experience to, like I said, we talked about earlier, pain has a purpose. I've made some of the closest bonding friendships with people because of a difficulty with a tragedy. And it helps us get through, and it's important. So we will talk about that, because I would love to meet your son. You said he's in 5th grade. My son's in 3rd grade, or 2nd grade. He's going into 3rd grade. So mine's 8 and 4. So we would love to get together and spend some time. But to close out the show, I would like to talk about the latest happenings. I know the last few months have been very, very busy. A lot of I want to say leaps and bounds, but in the realm of shared parenting, they are leaps and bounds. Why don't you share with us what's going on, what has gone on in the last few months in each state, and where we're at right now, and what we have to look forward to in the future?
Yeah, to be honest, it was actually a relatively speaking, a good year, actually a great year for shared parenting. After 40 years of beating our heads against the wall and basically no progress at all, I didn't expect this to be a good year for us, because after being around the legislative arena, I knew that last year was basically shut down because of COVID.
Yeah.
Which meant every legislative system in the country was going to have not just this year's bills, but last year's bills that didn't get addressed. So they were going to try and do twice the business, not counting the fact that they were actually going to do triple the business, because COVID brought about so many new issues with the education systems and with law enforcement issues and other things being brought up. I expected this to just be such a bottleneck that we weren't even remotely on the radar. We wouldn't get anything done at all. But my attitude was, we're not going to give up. We're still going to file bills and go for it. But to be honest, I didn't expect anything to make it to the finish line. Yeah. And in Arkansas, Patrick and Gina just did a phenomenal job down there of passing literally the strongest shared bill in the country with clear and convincing evidence as the standard. I mean, it's a phenomenal job that they did down there. And it was neat because NPO and AFESP worked together on this. In years past, people have tried to get our making it look like competition. I'll just tell you flat out, as the head of AFESP, if I ever hear anybody in my organization say we're in competition with NPO or TFRM, they're not a part of our organization. Okay? Right. Because we are not in competition. Each of us have different strengths and weaknesses. And Don Cuban, who's the head of NPO, I think has done a dynamite job. And so we worked very well together. Patrick and Gina were the boots on the ground. They just did a phenomenal job in getting that bill passed. Then we also passed in Oklahoma, a lot of due to the connections that Chris Rainbolt and Linda Steele had. The facts, findings, and conclusions bill, HB 1151, was their bill. And then in Tennessee this year, the SB 1366 which was the facts, findings, and conclusions that Mike Leventhal and Harry Tyndall got passed. And ironically, both of them were signed by the governors of their states within 24 hours of each other. That was kind of cool.
Wow. That's great.
To have 3 bills that were signed into law in 1 year, that's a pretty darn good year, considering it was a COVID year still. Now, I think because of that, I think next year is going to be a groundbreaking year across the country. Now, it never happens as fast as people want. It's just the legislative arena all across the country. It's not going to happen.
Do you believe there'll be a somewhat of a domino effect that with these bills and give us new information? First of all, as we know with Kentucky, with Kentucky, things like domestic violence went down. Clearly, there's some benefits to this. Obviously, there's less financial benefits for the state, but the people don't honestly care about that. Find your funding somewhere else. You're not going to take our kids from, and make money that way. But with these bills that as they're being passed, do you believe that will create an amount of momentum that will generate this into something that could be national within
absolutely. Momentum is in our
5 to 6 years.
The momentum is in our favor. Momentum is definitely in our favor at this point, hands down. The facts, findings, and conclusions bill that Missouri passed in 2016, that's being introduced in state after state now. And now that we have Tennessee and Oklahoma that have one passed, that's going to be the domino. And once you pass that, it's so much easier to get another bill through the door. So I think momentum is in our favor. Now, that's at the state level. Now, I do want to caution people, at the federal level, momentum is actually against us. And a lot of people, were thinking, we need to get rid of Title 4D. I'll just tell you, I don't mean to make people panic, but I'll just tell you what, your hair ought to be standing up on the back of your neck right now about what could be potentially happening with Title 4D over the next 2 years at the federal level. Because not only are we not in a position to get rid of it, it's going to be added to. And we need some people fighting for that. And that's why during COVID, I actually stopped asking for donations. I think some people may remember in November and December, I specifically told people, look, don't ask for donations. I'm not going to ask for donations because people need money for Christmas. There's people that don't have a job right now, and I'm not going to be asking for donations. But I'll tell you what, and Carnell Smith talked about it, the guy who's the paternity coach that down in Alabama that did so much work and just a great, great guy. But he talks about the fact that Mark shouldn't be having to explain his salary, because I tell you what, we're fighting lobbyists that are being paid $1 million a year. And if we're having to have somebody that's driving for Uber 12 hours a day and trying to squeeze in, and I saw Linda Jones on here and so many other people that have been calling me this year asking advice, and I haven't had time to help them because I can't pay my own bills. I'm in jeopardy. And I'll just tell you, my condo, is not a glamorous condo, guys. True story. My condo is valued at $68,000. Okay. Yeah. So you can imagine, and this is in St. Louis, so you can imagine what it looks like here. But when I'm having to worry about, will I have enough gas in the tank? Will I have food at the table? That doesn't put somebody in the frame of mind where they've got the time, the effort, the energy, or the mentality to help. But I'll just tell you, not to brag or anything, but I know where the fight is in Washington, D.C. I know the contacts, and I know how to take that fight to them. I don't have the resources right now. I don't have the money to pay for the airfares, the money to pay for the hotel, and I can't afford to take another week off without driving for Uber, or I lose either my condo or I miss a child support payment, which I can't afford to do. So I am going to start asking people for money again, and I would hope that they would appreciate that, to say, you know what? If that guy spent 35 years learning how to move things through the legislative session, and he knows how to do it, and he's willing to do it, why don't I take a little bit of my money, $25, $50, to contribute to his efforts, rather than me having to spend 3 years to know what he knows and make the connections that he makes. I can take some of my resources to help fund some of his efforts. And the same thing with you. We need people helping to fund your efforts, because you've got a gift of knowing how to do podcasts, but we need some resources for you. But I do need, if anybody can contribute, I'll just tell you, we need some people in Washington, D.C. right now, and not to brag, but those who have been with me have seen me. I saw John Nichols up here, not to brag, but people who've seen me at a state know I don't just show up for photo ops to act like I'm doing something. When I go to a state, I go with a strategy and a plan of attack. And I know who I'm meeting with and who I don't want to meet with. And I know what I need to do to navigate that. And I'll work my butt off for 20 hours a day maneuvering things through a state. But I need the funds to get there. So if people can, the easiest way is the PayPal at it's info@afesp.com, or
and I'll put that up for you.
afesp.com website. But very seriously, guys, I'm not exaggerating. Garrett can tell you, we literally are to the point right now where my Uber money is funding AFESP right now. That's not an exaggeration. And it's hysterical because, for the last 2 years, I had people having a tizzy fit that I was making $1,500 a month. Well, where are they right now?
Right.
A lot of those people have a swimming pool in their backyard, or they got acreage on their property, or they're out traveling the country, and they got plenty of money. And yet my Ubering is supporting the whole AFESP movement right now. So if people can contribute, we really do need it right now, and very sincerely, because the biggest key right now that we're worrying about at the state level is these red flag laws. And this came very close to being passed in Missouri, where somebody can call the police anonymously, tell someone that they believe someone could be a danger to themselves or someone else. The police show up at the door to confiscate any guns that are in the house, and that person is then banned from having a gun. Now, there's no due process. It hasn't gone in front of a judge. It's just an anonymous. Well, imagine how that would be used in custody battles.
Right.
Somebody not only calls to make the anonymous tip, but they also happen to have a private detective with a camera stationed outside the house waiting for the police to show up when that happens, so they can use it in the custody battle to say, hey, we have pictures of the police showing up at this person's house. We don't know what happened. Well, I'll tell you what happened. They're the ones who made the call. Right. Almost like that time that CNN showed up at, I forget whose house it was, General Flynn or Roger Stone or somewhere, that when they went to raid his house, CNN was already waiting there with the cameras rolling.
Was it Giuliani?
Well, that was recently, but a few years ago, it was CNN had I think, they had already camped out.
Roger Stone, maybe.
But that would be used in custody battles like you can't imagine. That's going across the country. So we need some people that are fighting against things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So to close out the show, what is next? What is on the agenda? What do you need? Obviously, donations. I have that up right now. So you guys, please help out Mark. And then I want to talk to you about some of that and see how I can get involved with helping with finances now that I'm in a better position with some of the things that I'm doing. Maybe I can help raise money with some of my podcasting and some of my musical abilities, and put money into your pocket so that you can go fight the fight that I can't do, because that's not what I do. I'm an entertainer. I do things like this, and if I can make a little bit of money and throw some your way so that you can go fight for my kids, your kids, and everyone else's kids and our grandkids, then I will definitely do that. So let's talk afterwards on that. But what is next? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, I think next year is going to be a very good year at the state level for shared parenting bills, because some of that bottleneck got cleared out this year of the the trifecta of the COVID bills, last year's bills, and this year's bills all hitting at one time.
Right.
Biggest key is we need to make sure states are ready to pre-file, because there will still be more bills than normal next year, because you're still going to have some of that overflow. So the key is you've got to have your bills pre-filed in December. In almost every state, you're able to pre-file the bills ahead of time. So a lot of people think, oh, we're going to meet in January to decide what we're going to do. But by January, it's too late. The time to decide what you're going to do. So we are going to be doing a training seminar, which we've done every year for the last 3 years. This will be the 4th year in September. This year is going to be an online seminar. So that way people don't have to waste time traveling and spend the money of a hotel and everything. It's going to be 2 days, and we're going to actually dive into rolling up our sleeves on a couple of the states to say this is exactly who you need to meet with. This is what you need to do. But we need to make sure that states are ready before December 1st, that they know what committee they want their bill filed with, that they've had a meeting with their Speaker of the House, that they've chosen the right sponsor, because just because you have a sponsor means nothing. You need the right sponsor. A wrong sponsor can kill your bill worse than anything.
Yeah.
So we need to have that level at the state, but at the federal level, we need people going to Washington, D.C. on a regular basis on defense to make sure that Title 4D is not expanded, which could happen. They're talking now about this new child tax credit where they're going to send out checks at $250. Well, how much of that do you think is going to be going to non-custodial parents who are the ones who are actually paying for the children? So
for the program.
We need people in Washington, D.C. explaining this to people of what's really going on. I had a great meeting last year with Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, that had filed a bill that was basically going to be working against us with Title 4D and child support issues. And Gina Indelicato and I had a great conversation with him and his staff and educated him and made quite an impact to the point where that bill didn't basically see the light of day. But some of those things we can't disclose to everybody, those meetings, but we need to have the funds ready, and we need a team of people that can articulate that message. But that's where you and I can be powerful. Sometimes we get podcasters that want to do everything. They want to, be the Al Sharpton showing up for the photo ops and everything. I think the best role for me when I get done to meeting with them, for you to come on an interview and say, what happened today? What is the next step? And for you to ask the questions that sometimes I may not think of the questions that need to be asked, but for you to be able to, hey, what are people thinking? Because I go in with a mindset of what I've done, but to be able to interpret that for everyone and for you to help me interpret that, that's how we're a power team. You're the one helping to raise awareness, getting the message out, and interviewing me who's meeting with the legislators, and you're the one putting the word out to the masses. That makes a power team.
Well, for sure. I like you said, I came into this thing like a wrecking ball, sort of made mistakes, learned my way through it, figured out where my niche was, and I positioned myself where I'd like to get involved with you and help prop this up even further. So definitely let's chat after the show. I want to talk about how I can get you some money, using my talents and abilities to earn some money to get to help fund your endeavors. I do want to plan a trip to meet Levi. I see pictures. Cool. I feel like we're family. As weird as that seems, like I see your kid. I like his photos. Like I watch your memories. I share mine. We see each other's children. And we're doing this with very limited, we take pictures of every moment. You journal everything. I photograph them doing every single weekend I have them. I take pictures of them because they grow so fast in those 2 weeks. Literally, I have no contact, hardly a phone call, unless I ask or I beg. But it got to the point where asking for a phone call, you would have thought that I was interrupting her life. So I stopped. I stopped having that conversation, and I just focused on the fight. If there was a special occasion that I wanted a phone call, whether it be a birthday or a holiday, I asked for it then. But sadly, distancing myself is the best thing at this point, and doing everything through a lawyer, through legal matters, through filing, through the courts. And it's terrible to say, but it does keep the peace a little bit. And I do want to have you back on another time. I'm glad that I got to have you on this time because I know you're busy all the time. You're always out making money.
I feel bad because I wasn't, like I said, I have so much respect for you. You've done a great job. And I do think it's important for us to all work together. When I was semi-new, there were people because that's how you build an audience is you get exposure. And there were people like a Dr. Torrey and a Wendy and people like that would have me on. And I've never forgotten that. But that's what we need to do. We need to help each other and work together, not feel like we're in some kingdom. It's, hey, how can I help this person? And they'll help me too. And we help each other as a family.
And imagine the change that we could do exponentially in the amount of time if everybody got together their resources and talents and abilities and put down any of their disagreements and arguments, because we all want to fight this battle. We all think it needs to be won this way, that, the other thing, but it needs to be won, period. And we can do it faster together. Again, that's why I want to speak to you about some things that I can do to help. Mark, why don't you have the last word before we sign off? I appreciate having you on. We've gone well over an hour, but we had some technical difficulties. So great players adjust. And that's a line that I like to teach my sons. Great players adjust. So Mark, go ahead and sign us off. Go ahead and give us the last word.
Yeah, I just want to thank you once again, and so many people in the community. There's people like yourself and me and a Jesse West and a Josh Jaros, and I hate to mention names, but to be honest, we're just a small picture of the community. The real heroes of the community are the people who make a contribution, the people who share a post, the people who like a post, because without them, this change wouldn't be taking place. And that's what I always try to remember. You know, a lot of people mention all the postcards that I send out, which I've probably sent out about 2,000 in the last. Every time I go to a city, I write postcards. And the reason I do that, I never want to forget that the reason I'm there and the people who help pay for that trip are the ones I'm sending those postcards to. And so the community isn't you and me. There's a huge community out there of people. We may never know their name, that we always have to remember they're just as much a part of the community as we are. But as a community, like you said, if we all lock arms, we're unstoppable. We just need to stop fighting inside, and let's all work together. But proud of you. You're doing an awesome job, Chris. You really are. So anytime I can ever do on or anything I can do to help you, always let me know.
That's awesome. Well, I'll chat with you privately, and we'll discuss some of the things that I mentioned. But Mark, thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Share this video. Go to We the Parents Podcast on YouTube, on Facebook. Go to America's for Equal Shared Parenting on Facebook. Go to afesp.com to donate. You can go to info@afesp.com as well. That's down below. And let's change this thing for our kids. Let's not accept things the way they are. Guys, the government works for you. I like to reiterate that as a libertarian. The government works for you, so let's put them to work doing what we need them to do. So guys, thank you so much. Mark, have a great night. Tell Levi I said hello, and we'll get together soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right now. Bye now.